Welcome to Grievers Empowerment with Tanika Dillard. In this edition, we will talk about a very common emotion that grievers experience, and that is the emotion of guilt. For over a decade, I have been privileged to walk alongside grieving families, specifically those families who have experienced pregnancy and infant loss. And one recurring emotion that I find in conversation after conversation is the guilt emotion. As parents, we feel responsible for every aspect of our children's lives. And when our children face or encounter events that are different than what we anticipate, we feel responsible and we feel guilty if those events cause harm to our children. Well, it's no different when a death occurs. Now, although I'm speaking through examples of pregnancy and infant loss, this guilt emotion is common among grievers of any kind. But I specifically want to speak to those who have experienced pregnancy and infant loss. As mothers, and I'm going to use myself as an example, as a mother, it's my responsibility to take care of the well-being of my children. And as I carried my daughter at 16 weeks and I miscarried her, I felt responsible. I felt like I should have known. There was something that I should have known or something that I should have done to save her life. So I carried a guilt emotion. Let's talk about guilt. We often think of guilt in terms of legality. Those that are in a courtroom, and we think of them as being guilty or innocent. If they did the crime, they are guilty. I want to think about how that relates to grievers. That definition of guilt is not the same in legal terms as it is for those who are grieving. Those that carry the grief of guilt must ask themselves the question, and this is a question that deserves an honest answer if we are going to experience recovery in our grief. And that question is, did I intentionally cause harm that led to the death of the person that you are grieving? Now let me tell you something. Grievers talk to themselves all the time. We do. We talk to ourselves. But if we're going to talk to ourselves, we must tell ourselves the truth. We must have honest conversations. What does that look like? I have said, and if you are grieving, I'm sure you have said in your grief journey, I feel so guilty about whatever you're feeling guilty about. But whenever you have this conversation with yourself, I'm going to invite you to stop and ask another question. And that question is, what did I do to intentionally cause harm that resulted in her death? Think about that question and answer it honestly. And when you arrive at that honest answer, it's going to be no. I did no intentional action to cause harm. It's not going to be a one-time question that you ask yourself. You will do this over and over again. This is the process of recovery. Recovery is taking the appropriate actions over and over again. So whenever you have the conversation with yourself and you remind yourself that you feel guilty, ask yourself the question, what did I do to intentionally cause harm that resulted in the death of the person that you're grieving. This will help you to unpackage the guilt of grief that you are carrying. I hope you are empowered to unpackage this, because the weight that you're carrying is not yours to carry. You can unpackage this. You can unpackage this and move forward in your recovery as an empowered griever. You can move forward. Unpackage your grief. Unpackage your guilt and tell yourself the truth. I hope you are empowered, and we'll see you next time for a Grievers Empowerment Moment with Tanika Dillard.